This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun. That is Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles McElroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, spring training has started. The Tigers are in Lakeland. Casey Mize is there. He's putting in some work. I'm excited, man. I like the fact that we've done it now, recorded podcasts every 2 weeks in the offseason. Lots of news developed regarding free agency. Justin Verlander, a bunch of other major leaguers are a little bit concerned regarding how free agents have been treated, and lots of interesting news and nuggets in the world of baseball, man. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Well, and then now there's the talk, and it's been going on for a while, but the talk of collusion. The Major League Baseball owners are doing this on purpose, as in colluding with each other, to not allow themselves, and any one of them that means, to pay these guys massive deals. So they're not receiving the massive money that once would have been available for these guys to receive. And I'm speaking primarily about Manny Machado and Bryce Harper, really 1A, 1B, and you can flip it how you refer to them as in terms of where they rank in this year's free agent class.
When I heard what Justin Verlander tweeted out, he kind of expressed concern like, wait a minute, something's going on here. The system is broken, is how he quite frankly described it. And so I started to do some reading and seriously took a dive into what's going on. And I do believe the system is broken, but at the same time, owners, Vito, are realizing, look, if I got to pay someone 10 years, it's going to cost me $250 million plus maybe even over $300 million for a talent like Bryce Harper. And so you realize, Vito, there's only maybe like 3 or 4 teams that might actually be willing to commit that. So more teams are tanking. More teams are not actually, signing guys to that level of contract. What they're trying to do is, go younger, and actually in the tanking model, in the true quote-unquote money ball, you try to find guys that are actually affordable in your market, okay? Similar to what the Tigers are trying to do. And what you do is you go, okay, they view a guy like Miguel Cabrera, behind the scenes, they don't view him as an asset. They view him as a massive liability in terms of the number. And so you look at it and you say, you know what? Basically, it's the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Red Sox that have the big money that their organizations are willing to go into the luxury tax and pay a bunch for a guy like that. But anyone else, you're going to have to come down. So the market's correcting itself, and I do think that the owners are intentionally, now they're not sending emails to each other and saying, hey, keep the price down, but they're making a decision to be more fiscally responsible. And here's another reason, Vito. Similar to the NFL, similar to other sports now like WWE and sports that have big time money that's guaranteed, these owners get fat checks from the likes of ESPN, from Major League Baseball, from the networks. So what happens is you're getting paid. If you run your organization semi-correctly, where you have maybe even 25% capacity of your attendance, you don't have to invest. You don't have to actually put a winning product on the diamond. And so, you know what? If you're not motivated to win, there's really only right now, you probably could count on your hands, organizations that are actually going and striving for wins. Most teams are tanking. And so when you have the system set up like that, guys like Machado, guys like Bryce Harper, they're going to be sitting on the sideline for a while. Look, even a guy like J.D. Martinez, he had a big number last year when he was thinking about what he was going to sign for. Eventually, what's going to happen is a team's going to sign these guys. But in a free market system similar to capitalism, the contract situations were way bloated, and guys got way, way, way more than they deserved. And now it's correcting a little bit. Is the system broken? I struggle to use that word broken, but definitely it's a system in which the players are realizing the money train is about to slow down, and that's the way it should be. If you're asking for $300 million and the market's dead, nobody calls, You wait and decide. You negotiate. Does somebody want to give that to you? You wait and wait and wait. If it hits into March, April, and the phone's kind of dead and silent, you got to come down a little bit, maybe to $280 million. And then maybe a couple teams will ring and you go, okay, maybe we can play these two against each other, maybe get $285, boom, $28.5 million a year. Dude, no one's going to starve on $28.5 million a year.
No, you should go for that at that point. Even if you're missing out on $300 million in totality over 10 years by a little bit, I think it's worth it to go for $280 over 10 or $285 over 10.
I don't blame a guy like Justin Verlander for advocating for players. It's not a problem.
Because he's a player. He's going to do that. It makes all the sense in the world from his standpoint.
But at the same time, after 2016, there was a collective bargaining agreement. And instead of looking at salaries, the players, when you look at it, the union decided to put things in place more along the lines of stuff that will help the players, not monetarily, but off the field, like more chefs, better food, a couple more days off in terms of how much they got to actually work, earlier start times for getaway days, things like that actually help the ball player out. So this next go-round, the contract was signed in 2016. It's going to run for 5 years. In 2021, they got to kind of look at contracts and get it done in a better way. And I think right now, it's not favoring the player as much. But I don't think the system is truly broken. It's just correcting.
I think so, too. Correcting itself is the best way of putting it. And in so many words, there aren't many Mike Ilitches out there that are willing to spend outlandish amounts of money on their ball club. Rather, these owners have the mindset of, let me save as much money as possible, because then you make as much money as possible, right? And that's why the owners act in the way that they do. And that's why these guys that are massive talents in Bryce Harper and Manny Machado aren't getting what they deem to be their value, what they deserve to be receiving on the open market. And that's why they're still waiting. And now you might have teams bidding against themselves, because truly there's not many teams interested, or teams that have the money, have the capacity to spend the money that Harper and Machado are looking for in the open market. And then there's also Dallas Keuchel, who gets no mention, who was a 2015 Cy Young Award winner. He is still on the open market. Like the top 3 to 4 free agents in this year's free agent class are still available on the open market, and there's still no determining factor for them for when they're going to sign. There's no guarantee they're going to sign in the next day or the next week or so. As spring training has already started for the Tigers, pitchers and catchers have reported, and for other ball clubs, and by next week you have all these teams reporting, yet Machado and Harper and Keuchel still might not be signed by that point. But I think in so many words, too, the market is correcting itself because these teams have realized that these guys aren't worth all this money, outlandish amounts of money over the long term, over 7 to 10 years. You see the Prince Fielder deal. He got 9 years and all that money. He wasn't worth all that money. And the bad thing is a guy like Machado and Harper 10 years ago would have gotten that Prince Fielder money, and probably north of that, because Machado and Harper can field, too. I mean, think about Fielder. As a first baseman, a guy that can't move, really a DH, he got all that money from Mike Ilitch. And Machado and Harper can actually field. They deserve probably that money, but they're not going to get it right now with the current state of baseball and the current economics of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's like contracts can't go from the best player making $20 million all of a sudden to making $35. It's got to kind of steadily increase. And, unfortunately, a guy like Bryce Harper, there are, I think, many people that look at sabermetrics feel like it's good for the game. It's good for young people to understand, and it's good for people to really reflect on what a true athlete does. But for the player, it kind of exposes them a little bit. Like, do you really want to sign a guy like Bryce Harper, who basically right now is a home run hitter, but at times struggles in certain situations to have a consistent batting average with runners in scoring position and things like that? And so there's so many advanced sabermetrics that people look at it and go, ooh. There's also another situation, too, in that he's injury-prone. He's struggled a little bit with injuries. That's also contributed to some of his struggles. So do you really want to risk that much money on Bryce Harper? He's a decent player, but I don't think that his numbers sabermetrically would indicate that what his asking price is. Now, is he worth $25 million a year? Probably. Maybe 24, 23 is something I'd be comfortable with. Now you're looking at north of 30, 31, 32. With what he brings to the table, I wouldn't do it. So that's where I think he's got to come down a little bit into maybe that $28 million range. Come down just a little bit and get that security. Bro, you're not happy with $28 million a year for the next 10 years? $280 million over the next 10 years, you're not happy?
You're saying
Seriously,
suck it up pretty much.
Suck it up,
Deal with it.
And I think the market's going to dictate that. I don't see him getting that big offer over $30 million. Do you?
Take the money and run with it, because there aren't many suitors out there for these guys that maybe deserve more suitors, but you brought up sabermetrics. How about Bryce Harper's WAR in 2018? Less than 2, according to baseballreference.com. Do you know what that is worth per year? Not even close to 20 mil or 15 mil a year. So right now, he's overvaluing himself. Now, I know he has won the National League MVP award in past season. He has won that award, a huge award, obviously, best player in the NL, one time in his career. And he's still relatively young and definitely in the prime of his career, as is Manny Machado. And that's why they're thinking they're worth all this money, and that's why they've been waiting out all this time, even as pitchers and catchers now are reporting. And full rosters will soon be reporting to spring training. But these guys are taking the gamble on themselves, and guess what? The gamble thus far for these two guys has not worked out. It hasn't worked out for Dallas Keuchel and numerous other free agents too. Now, in past free agent markets, you could have said that Harper would get $300 million because he has won that NL MVP award once, has been a 5+ WAR player in the past, but he's not consistently that 5+ WAR player. He has been injury prone. Manny Machado has not been that 5+ WAR player consistently in his career either. So you use those factors as well against those guys, and that devalues them too. So, and then Machado also isn't the biggest hustler, is not known for, running out ground balls hit to second, shortstop, third base. He's not always running hard down the first baseline and trying to beat out that ground ball for a hit. So you got that working against Machado as well. And really, I think Manny Machado is not the player that is worth 10 years, $250 million. Maybe Harper is worth more of that money over the long term. And once again, they're only 26 years young, so they have that working in their advantage too. Thus, they are in their primes. But to give them a 10-year deal, as Justin Verlander had kind of inferred, saying that, signing those guys, Bryce or Manny, seems like a good place to start a rebuild to me. Saying that signing those guys for 10 years isn't bad, and then adding 26 to 36 is a great performance window too. Well, guess what? From 26, 27 to 32, that's truly your prime as a major league ball player. Once you get past 31 or 32 years old, you're no longer in your prime. So Justin Verlander is saying that your prime is from 26 or 36, a 10-year window. This is not the prime, the full prime for these guys. It doesn't last that long over the course of each of those years in that 10-year window that Verlander mentioned in his tweet. So to say that is pretty asinine, actually, on behalf of JV. And I get that he's advocating for the player and wants the players to get paid because guess what? He ultimately wants to get paid in his next contract too. But for Harper or Machado to get a 10-year deal and $300 million or more, it's just not worth it, and it's not going to happen. And I would say Harper is going to get $250 million. Manny Machado might not even get that, even though it has been recently reported that the White Sox maybe have increased their offer to $250 million, but over 7 or 8 years. And the White Sox have that big offer currently, supposedly, to Manny Machado. The Yankees supposedly are willing to go up to as much as $220 million over 7 or 8 years. So $30 million less from the Bronx Bombers, who reportedly are Machado's preferred landing spot. So he still might just end up in the Bronx for $30 million less than what the White Sox are willing to offer because he prefers to play in the Bronx for that big market club. But in so many words, gambling on himself, Machado as he has and Harper as he has, it might not pay out for them and end up being all the money that they thought they would be getting this offseason, Doc.
One final reason that I read was, look at the number of free agents, just the sheer number. The number has declined, okay? And one of the reasons why the numbers have declined, that's why the biggest names are Harper and Machado. The likes of talent, including Corey Kluber, Anthony Rizzo, Andrelton Simmons, Gene Segura, Jose Quintana, and Adam Eaton, all signed early extensions. And so what clubs do is they say, oh, you know what, this is a player that can contribute. They offer them guaranteed money, and they extend them early. So there's not a lot of free agents out there, in terms of, a competition for a bunch of these players. So there's not a bunch of free agents, and I do think the market correcting itself. And you know what? Unfortunately, the demand is not there for these guys, and that's why they haven't signed. So that's what happens. And I do think that early extension has thinned the crop of available free agents, and so that's why you're left with a couple guys that are kind of just waiting for a fair and significant offer that they want to take.
And these guys probably think that they are worth everything that they want, that they're worth a blank check, worth a contract that constitutes or consists of them being handed a blank check and them filling in the amount for themselves, whatever they want the amount to be. These guys are not worth that. They're not blank check guys, as I now am referring to these guys as, and that they're not as. They're not blank check guys. A guy that is, and the only guy in Major League Baseball currently, more than likely, is Mike Trout. He's the only guy that's worth that blank check. So despite the fact that maybe Machado and Harper currently believe that they are worth that blank check contract, meaning they can just fill in the amount that they want over 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it's not going to happen for those two guys because they're not deserving of it. There's not many guys deserving of it outside of Mike Trout. And honestly, as I think of it right now off the top of my head, and I have given it a little bit of thought prior to talking about it with you here on Tigers Talk, Doc, I don't think anybody outside of Mike Trout, for sure, currently of the position players in Major League Baseball, are worth that blank check contract. Pitchers, maybe it's Clayton Kershaw, Chris Sale, Scherzer, but, he's in the latter part of his career maybe. So these pitchers, I don't know if there is one pitcher you can say that about right now that is worth the blank check contract. Mike Trout's the only position player currently that's worth that. So it's not Bryce Harper and Manny Machado. Those guys are not worth that blank check contract, and they're not probably going to get as much money as they thought. But guess what? At the end of the day, they're still going to get around $250 million over the long term, over 7 or 8 years at least. So they're still getting paid handsomely, in my opinion. It's just based on the market in years past, it would have dictated more money for these two individuals than what the market is currently dictating for these two individuals, Doc.
Very interesting to look at, the dynamic between player and management. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out going forward. All right, let's take our first time out. Give credit to one of our fine sponsors, the Legacy Football Organization. Second half of the podcast, changes might be a coming in the world of baseball. I'm definitely curious to get your sense of what these rule changes that have been presented might look like. Are you in agreement? Very fascinating stuff. I was fascinated when I saw it. I'm like, a pitcher is going to be forced to face 3 batters? Seriously? I was like, some of these changes are going to change the landscape of the game. We'll talk about that and more in the second half of the podcast.
Changing times, and still with the changing times, Legacy Football is a great sponsor of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. And Legacy Football, our fine sponsor at the DSP Network and of Tigers Talk, was founded in 2009. It is a premier off-season development program in the state of Michigan, in the Midwest, and in the entire U.S. of A. It provides unique platforms both on and off the football field for student athletes through community service, social awareness, education, and football. And it consists of a staff of many former collegiate stars and NFL players, including legendary Lions wide receiver Herman Moore and a past guest of Two Bad Hombres and former 3-time All-American linebacker at Docks University, Michigan State University. And I am speaking of Greg Jones. Now, to find out more about Legacy Football, at the end of the day, you can either contact National Director of Football Ops, Justin Sassante, or go online to www.legacyfootballorg.com. And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And Doc, you had said before the break about a 3-batter minimum for pitchers maybe being implemented in the near future. So it is something that could be changed in the near future as Major League Baseball and the Players Union have met. Probably will meet again and talk about many, many issues. And this is one of the many topics that have been brought up at least. And you know what? Would it be a good thing, Doc? And then we'll get into a few other hard-hitting, topics as well regarding changes that could be on the horizon for Major League Baseball.
One of the things that has been talked about quite a bit that we've talked about is doing away with the pitcher batting in the National League, having a universal DH for both squads and making the game the same. For me, I'm totally against that. I find that, yes, I do get the notion that those that are against it will say, well, in basketball, you don't have, the East and the West play 2 different games and things like that. But it's been tradition. It's been something that's been a staple of the game. The National League is played differently. The strategies are different than the American League. And so that's why it was really cool when they would play each other, because then the pitcher would finally have to. And I was, early on against interleague play, but it's provided for some new rivalries and things like that. But I always liked the intrigue of the American League team facing the National League team only in the World Series. But for me, that's one change that's not needed. And I spoke on this with Jason on the Motor City Sports Rant podcast, which comes out every single Tuesday on the network. And I said this, the emphasis should be placed in these rule changes on pace of play. They need to figure out a drastic way to get the games, I told Jason, probably between 2 hours and 15 minutes and 2.5 hours. And if you can, maybe even 2 hours, because of the fact that attention spans are shorter.
Decreasing, too, by the day.
The games for the Tigers, you and I started to comment on it when we would go down to Comerica Park to cover the games as media. We'd say, man, Vito, these games are going on like 3 hours and 10 minutes, and it just drags when you have these 4th, 5th, 6th innings that, involve a bunch of time. And you're like, man, you know what? If a baseball game started at 7:30 and you knew it was going to be done right at 9:30, I think that'd be golden. Boom, get your stuff done, get all your interviews taking place, out the door at 10:15, you're golden. But these games, sometimes go to 10:30, 10:45, and these pitchers are taking their sweet time. So that's my emphasis would be on reducing the pace of play, bring more young people, and also at the grassroots level, baseball has a problem in terms of minorities playing baseball. They're not playing baseball. And when you look at some of the fans that are attending the games, I think there's a diversity issue going on in the world of Major League Baseball, and it's quite distinct. It's starting to be talked about that a lot of young African Americans are not playing baseball, and they're not playing especially at the major league level. And you look at it and you go, why is that? Why is it that now it's become a foreign game? Why is it that African Americans are turning away from baseball, a game that's quality, a game that has legacy? Young cats aren't investing as much in baseball and watching it. I mean, my nephew loves it. He definitely is all about it, but the youth have to be invested, and I do think social media and these organizations got to do a better job of that. But among the rule changes, what do you think about potentially pitchers being forced to face 3 batters in an effort to stop all these pitching changes?
You know what? I don't think it's going to be implemented. I really don't think it's going to happen. Now, I get that the point of it is that they want to speed up the pace of play. They want that to be changed and rectified moving forward, and just lessen the length of these games because of declining attention spans. And you brought up another point, too, about minorities not playing baseball. How about managers as well? They're not becoming coaches and managers either. And that is probably because at a grassroots level, a very beginner's level, and as you go through the minor league system and beyond, these guys aren't playing baseball that are African Americans. They're playing other sports, and we probably have to get them geared more towards baseball again, as it used to be a lot more of that, and now it's not, Doc.
According to ESPN.com, an article that I sent you, here are the major talking points, some rules that are being discussed. A 3-batter minimum for pitchers, a universal designated hitter like we spoke on, a single trade deadline before the All-Star break, a 20-second pitch clock, which I'm obviously in favor of, speed up the game, the expansion of rosters to 26 men with a 12-pitcher maximum, draft advantages for winning teams, and penalties for losing teams, which obviously kind of is geared toward having teams to avoid tanking.
You have to get rid of that, yep.
A study to lower the mound, and finally, a rule that would allow 2 sport amateurs to sign major league contracts. And I do think news that broke earlier this week was definitely a damaging blow to baseball as well, in that prize first rounder, Kyler Murray, chose football, a violent sport, over baseball. I think is telling in that, you know what? This was a guy that an organization wasted a first-round pick on, was given money, now has to give it back and things like that. But when you look at it, you go, wow, this was a guy that, ownership of Oakland made an emphasis to go visit him. They really seriously were wanting him to contribute and be part of the Oakland Athletics. He took that information in and decided to play football, that his passion was football. So a squad like Oakland risked it all, and snake eyes, and it's unfortunate.
Well, he's saying F baseball in so many words, and FCTE. He's saying FCTE because he's not worried about CTE then playing football, this dangerous, violent sport that has been deemed to be too violent for individuals to play moving forward, right? And people had talked about, the NFL is going to just die out. And now there's new leagues forming left and right. The XFL is coming back. So you got these leagues that are still doing all right for themselves, including the NFL. And the NFL, I think, will continue to thrive enough to stick around. And in Kyler Murray, there is an African-American that is choosing to play another sport outside of baseball, too. And I think because of these players that are growing up nowadays that are African-American, that are of any race or ethnicity, they don't know who the likes of Frank Robinson, who just passed away, are, who won the MVP in 2 separate leagues, was one of the lone African-American managers at one point. They don't know who Frank Robinson is, sad but true. They barely even know who Hank Aaron is. They barely even know who Jackie Robinson is. They don't know the great African-Americans that have played the game in past years. in decades past. So that's a sad state that baseball exists in, is that these young guys growing up nowadays don't know these all-stars and great Hall of Fame players of yesteryear, such as Frank Robinson. And that's a big, I think, telling sign of Major League Baseball struggling to adapt to the changing ways, right, with the younger generation, and struggling to get these younger kids to gravitate towards the game of baseball and to get them playing the game of baseball, because not enough minority kids, as you said, Doc, already are playing the game of baseball. And example A right there is Kyler Murray, who the Oakland A's wasted a first-round draft pick on, thinking that he would become a superstar player for their organization and a guy that would be a building block that they could build around for future seasons. And now he is saying F you to baseball, and like I said, risking CTE and all these dangerous collisions and injuries, and not worrying, I guess, about that, because he could have easily, with that first-round draft status that he possessed in Major League Baseball with the Oakland A's, he could have decided just to go that route, which is, the so-called easier and safer route. And he's saying no, I am not pursuing baseball for my career. And I would say that last thing that we brought up about changes that could be in store, the rule that would allow two-sport amateurs to sign Major League contracts, is pretty much the Kyler Murray rule, isn't it? And it's a rule that I think will allow Major League Baseball teams to continue taking the risk of drafting these guys that are two-sport stars. Because right now, I think with what the A's went through, getting duped and really just getting stabbed in the backs, right? There's other Major League Baseball organizations to a large scale now that aren't going to take the chance that they did on Kyler Murray in the first round, knowing that he's already this great quarterback. So I think this rule would be in place to really avoid other teams from suffering the repercussions that the Oakland A's now are suffering by Kyler Murray saying that he is 100% committed to football.
Do you believe him? Do we ever see Kyler Murray playing baseball?
I think no, actually. And I think he'll make enough money in the NFL, and because once again, the TV contracts for the NFL and what these franchises in the NFL are making, I think the contracts might expand anyways. There might be more guaranteed money to be made for these guys moving forward. And now it's a quarterback-driven league anyways. It's all about providing safety for the quarterbacks, ensuring that they don't suffer these major hits and major injuries. So if he stays upright and healthy for a long period of time, he might totally forget about what he once dreamed of with a Major League Baseball career. And remember, at the end of the day, Kyler Murray, he told all of us that his dream was to play in the NFL, was not to play Major League Baseball. So him deciding on the NFL over Major League Baseball should not be totally stunning to all of us, because he already had made it known that he preferred the NFL over Major League Baseball, despite the injury concerns and, as I kind of joked about, but on a serious note, the concern of CTE that these guys could experience and endure through as they progress through their NFL careers and in their life after football.
Yeah, Vito, it's just going to be fascinating to see, how the Oakland A's respond to this. Does Kyler Murray actually have success, or does he try maybe early on, if he doesn't get drafted well, does he maybe say, you know what, I can leverage myself, go back into the draft? He does still have that option. So the door's not 100% shut. It's just almost there. He needs to slam it shut. If he gets drafted probably in the first 15, I think you can slam it shut.
I think so, completely. He might be the number one overall pick of the Arizona Cardinals. Their new head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, has already come out and said when he was the Texas Tech head coach, he would consider taking Kyler Murray number one.
Wow.
And really quick, a universal DH. I like because why are we seeing these pitchers hit? These pitchers can't even swing a bat. They're striking out 1, 2, 3. So what's the point of these pitchers going up to bat in the NL when you have plenty of hitters, guys that are succeeding at the DH spot in the American League that have made the Hall of Fame because of the DH spot being opened up in the American League so many years ago now, such as Edgar Martinez, voted in by the writers. How about Harold Baines? Come on, these guys are making the Hall of Fame because they have been pretty much DHs for their whole entire career. So I say open it up in the National League, because I don't want to see guys like, Justin Verlander, when there is interleague play, having a bat. Max Scherzer, who has gotten a couple of hits, have to bat. And other guys that are not named Madison Bumgarner, who can't even hold a bat, have to hit in the NL. It's just pitiful. So I'm tired of the NL having the rule and a different rule than the American League. It should be the universal DH implemented. And I hope this happens very soon.
All right, Vito, before we get out of here, I see this on the rundown. I'm shocked you put it on there. But before we get to that, the newspapers definitely have some good, interesting articles in terms of who's competitive and who's not. Obviously, the Tigers are in the not competitive list.
2 thumbs down for them.
They're in the wait until next year list with the Blue Jays, Orioles, Tigers, Royals, Mariners, Marlins, and Diamondbacks. There are 11 squads that are in it to win it, and they include the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Rays, Indians, Astros, Braves, Phillies, Nationals, Brewers, Cubs, and Dodgers. 11 squads are going to be competitive in terms of having the ability to win it all.
Now, where's the competitive balance then? There's no parity. And Major League Baseball used to be known for its parity. You look at the American League especially. The NL was better, is stronger still, I believe. The AL, there's only so many teams that really can make the playoffs, that are good enough to make the playoffs, Doc. Sad but true.
Sad but true, and I think that's what I think is harming baseball right now is the lack of parity.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that more and more as the offseason progresses and we see where the prize free agents end up. All right, Vito, it's Valentine's Day this week. You're definitely fascinated and wondering, okay, you know what, in a way to say, you know what, this is an admiration. Is there somebody on the Tigers that you would like to have a cup of coffee with over Valentine's Day?
Well, I'm not going to say Miguel Cabrera. I might have said that back in the day, but he has a mistress now and a lot of fees to pay for his children out of wedlock.
You might get $15,000 a month if you can bring along a young lady that he's fond of.
Yes, yeah, you can take the lady back. Anyways, forget that for right now because my answer would be Matthew Boyd, who have you noticed I've fallen in love with him because he did an interview with me at a Tigers game, a game that we cover for the DSP network. Generous dude, man. You talk to him, I talk to him. Like, this is one of the, I'm going to really hype him up, but one of the greatest dudes, man.
Good guy.
I've ever met.
Very fair.
Maybe known to mankind. And he was so generous and so nice, man.
Yes.
I can see where he would get the ladies, and he's married and does foundational stuff for his own foundation. He's a great dude. I would love to get coffee with him. How about you? And he's not bad looking, by the way. Not that that matters, really. But anyways, moving on to you.
You know what? I think I probably want to have coffee with Nick Castellanos. Because
okay, Nick C. Now, why is that?
He might spill some tea regarding some of the problems and why he wants to be out. I think he's ready now to talk and to say, look, the organization's done, and they're not going to be around for another 5 years. And a guy like that that's ready to go, maybe not this year, but in a year or two is going to talk and just be like, man, it was tough to play in Detroit because we were just going to get our asses kicked, and we knew it, and we had to sell that we were going to try and be competitive and talk about all these young cats. But going into it, we knew we were going to get our ass kicked, lose 90 games, and we just had to just basically dance and clap and act like things were important. I mean, the biggest part of the year, the biggest buzz that's going to be generated is which players show up in spring training and bobblehead nights for the manager. That's about it.
And the college nights. Come on. Yeah, Detroit Mercy Night, Michigan State Night, all of those nights too.
Very good stuff, sir. I enjoyed this recording. Very interesting stuff. Interesting insights. To follow Vito on Twitter, follow him at Vito Jerome. To follow the network, follow us at Detroit Podcast. If you agree or even disagree with anything that you've heard, feel free, message. We'll read it. If you want to leave us a voicemail talking anything about baseball, your expectations, any players that you're excited to see, lob us a voicemail. 248-579-8686. We'll put you right on. Get yourself over.
It's time for the universal DH in baseball and for me, Big V, to find love. Adios.